Welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I founded an eco-conscious pottery company called Oxford Clay. Now, I don't just make pottery, I make resources such as books and courses for other potters who want to be more eco-conscious in their pottery practice. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about me sharing everything I've learned with you, and I can't wait to get started. Let's go! Hello, so before we get on with the episode, I wanted to tell you about two completely free guides that I've made just for you about pottery. And the first guide is called How to Make a Pottery Glaze. So if you've ever been curious about how to make your own pottery glaze, this guide will show you exactly how to make your own glaze from start to finish. It tells you all the ingredients you need. It tells you step by step how to make the glaze, how to stay safe when glaze making, and it's got a stoneware glaze recipe in there. And if you've been curious about how to fire pottery, I have also made a guide on electric kiln firing. So this guide will tell you all the different terms that's used in like kiln firing, and what they mean, and it also takes you through the exact firing schedule that I use to do my bisque firing and also stoneware glaze firing. So it's got all the temperatures in there, all the timings in there, and both of these guides are available from the Oxford Clay website at www.oxfordclay.co.uk/resources for potters. Okay, let's get on with the episode. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. In today's episode, I'm very excited to bring you an interview that I did with an Oxfordshire-based creative entrepreneur like myself called Ruth Harris. And Ruth actually owns two creative businesses, Field and Fabric and Catkin Studio. So in this interview, me and Ruth, we're talking about creativity, like where her creativity kind of comes from, her creative practices, and we just get to hear more about Ruth's businesses. And I'll put the links to Ruth's businesses in the show notes so you can check those out there. So just to say, me and Ruth actually met at the Didcot Craft Fair in 2021, and we were serendipitously placed next to each other. We were both stall holders and our tables were like right next to each other. And I was just so impressed with just like all the different ways Ruth creates, and it was very, very inspiring. And she's also much more experienced at doing craft fairs than me. That was actually my first ever craft fair, so I really wanted to kind of like get up the courage to kind of chat to Ruth and like ask for her advice, and Ruth was very gracious. And ever since then I have been following Ruth's work, and I've just been so inspired by just the level of her creativity. Is so inspiring to me. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoy chatting to Ruth. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you. So let's go. Hello, Ruth. Welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, Catherine.
Hello. So, I wanted to ask you whether you could describe your creative businesses. So, you have two businesses, don't you?
I
Describe what
do.
you do.
Yeah. So I've got, as you say, two businesses. I've got Field and Fabric, and I've got Catkin Studio. And there's a bit of a tale behind both of these. So I started off with Field and Fabric, which was handmade accessories, homeware gifts. So lots of things, one of a kind, things that I'm sitting and making, and quite often textile based. So I'll think, oh, I'd quite like to make a bag, quite like to make this. I've sort of dabbled in resin with sea glass inside it, coat hooks, all sorts. Set up a folksy shop, which is a UK version of Etsy, for those of you who are not familiar with it. Started out craft fairs, also joined Crafters Emporium in Oxford. That was great, brilliant, and it's still ongoing. But then I started to get back into painting. as well as doing textiles side of things. And I started to find that my painting related work didn't quite seem to sit quite as happily alongside the rest of the things I was making. So as a result, I decided in the last sort of 4 or 5 months that actually what I was going to do was split into two. And this was a really big kind of change for me. So I've now ended up with two businesses. I've got Field and Fabric that still does all that great stuff with sort of the one of a kinds, and then I've got Catkin Studio, which focuses more on my artwork side of things. So that's the creative bit there is actually in making up the designs. And then I get those printed onto like a range of homewares and gifts like tea towels and coasters and mugs and cushions and makeup bags, and the list goes on. And the designs and ranges for that are expanding. And I think that was a really great choice for me because that sits together very nicely and it's very cohesive as a brand, and it's just feels a lot easier to market. So those are my two businesses. So I sell my Field and Fabric side of things. I sell, as I said, on Folksy and also Crafts Emporium and fairs. My Catkin Studio side of things, I have my own website and it's really exciting. And so I sell on there as well as fairs and the Crafts Emporium as well.
Oh, that's so fantastic. I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast, just because of like the range of things you create. I remember when we met at the Didcot Craft Fair, and I was just so impressed by just like the range of different creative
The really
practices you have. So
bonkers range of things I
it's
have.
amazing. It's very inspiring. It's very inspiring. So do you have a kind of personal creative practice as well as your two businesses?
Well, I think my creative practice is quite heavily linked to those two businesses. Creative practice came first, and the businesses came sort of second, really. So I've got two routes, I suppose. So for the stuff that I make for Field and Fabric, it's very much learning and creating by doing. So for example, this can sound a bit bizarre. I was on holiday and I went to the beach, did a bit of beach combing, and I found a surveyor's tape. So you know when you were like at school and you were taken on a geography field trip and you had to like measure the beach. Someone had obviously lost one of those, a big long length, sort of about 20 meters of the tape broken off. And so I untangled it from the seaweed, brought it home, I washed it and sanitized it. And I started weaving it into purses that I then sewed on the sewing machine. I've never done anything like that before, but it's just a case of play. And so I did one purse and I thought, oh yeah, that doesn't look too bad. That looks all right. Oh, but I wonder what happens if I start adding in ribbon. So I then started weaving the tape with ribbon. And so my Field and Fabric kind of creative practice is very much through play. But the flip side of that is that I don't have a particularly long attention span. I fiddle with an idea until I'm happy with it. And I kind of got a curiosity, I guess, to see what I can create and what I can achieve. But then that means that sort of once I've got to a certain point with an idea, I'm kind of like, yep, I've done that. Kind of what next? Which is why I end up with a lot of one-offs, and why it makes it quite a hard business really to market it. There are obviously a set of skills that underpin that come through experience. So like sewing skills, mixed media skills, kind of the ability to visualize how shapes might fit together to create a 3D whole. But yeah, it's very much a learn through doing practice. Whereas my Catkin Studio work, so my artwork onto printed products, is more about leaning on one particular skill, which is my painting and drawing side of things, and really letting things that I've seen or experienced connect with each other, just to sort of create something new. So I know you've seen some of my cat designs. I've got sort of an arts and crafts William Morris inspired one. That was a little bit of a moment of where's Wally combined with William Morris, because I've got cats hidden amongst sort of arts and crafts vine. So that's where that one kind of came from. And then kind of depending on the design, I either just go for it straight. I can see something in my mind and I just want to get it down on paper. Like the cats in space design I've just released. Or there's a lot more work behind it with concept drawings, tracing things, flipping things, drawing things again until I've got it just so, and then I start painting. And that was more what I was doing with the arts and crafts design, and the one that I'm working on at the moment with some bees. So it's two quite different approaches really, to what I do, and it's It's more that the creative practice has led to where the business is rather than the business informing the creative practice.
That's so interesting to hear how like your different businesses are kind of that your ideation happens in kind of slightly different ways in each one. That's really fascinating. Sort of like, creativity, like ideas through doing, and then ideas from kind of, I guess, like somewhere else. Like where do you think your ideas actually like sort of come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of all around me really. Cats, if you hadn't guessed, are a really big theme. I grew up with cats. I've got cats now. I am currently being plagued by cats on this call, trying to get in and out of the room, so on and so forth. They're quite playful and daft, so they've got to be inspiration. So there's definitely that. But I also draw inspiration from sort of nature, the things I see around me. I also really like to see what other people make, because other people make really cool things. So quite a lot of browsing on Pinterest, that kind of thing. And then going back to that kind of learning through doing thing, I get inspiration through that, because I like learning new things, new techniques. So I've been through phases of making jewelry, weaving, felt making, fabric dyeing, ceramics, resin, glass fusing, everything. And it all kind of starts to feed into each other. And so I will get moments like what happens if I combine this with that, these two completely different techniques. So, for example, I've taken up pottery, and I'm kind of hoping my pottery tutor next term might let me melt some beach glass that I found onto some of my ceramics and see what happens.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, that is such a cool thing to do in ceramics, to melt glass in it. I do a little bit of that as well. It's really cool.
Oh,
yeah,
exciting.
Yeah, I think that's what's very inspiring as well, is that you kind of, I think sometimes with something, say like if you've never done something before, like I've never done glass fusing. And then I remember one time I sort of messaged you and you said, oh, I'm going to this like glass fusing class. And it's very inspiring just to kind of like try something, you think, especially like if you've never done it before, sometimes I have this thing where I'm just like, well, I don't even know where I'd start, but it's so cool to have the kind of, I guess, like courage to try new things. I think that's what's so good. And like you said, it kind of all just feeds into everything, doesn't it? Like the more you do, the more kind of flourishes, creatively. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Like be brave and try new things. And if you get an opportunity to like take up a taster class in something you've never done before, like it doesn't matter if what you make is a bit rubbish. Like if you enjoyed the process and you learned something from it, and it makes you want to have another go, then that's fantastic. And by doing something once, you're probably going to learn what you did wrong, and how you can make something better next time.
I think that's such a good point, like thinking about like the process itself and the joy of the process rather than like the outcome of like what you're making. I think that's very good to keep in mind, especially with things like ceramics, where there's quite a lot of scope for things going wrong. When you've made something and then you put it in the kiln, you get it out of the kiln, you're like, oh. It can be like disappointing, but I think it's so brilliant just to kind of really focus on like the actual process itself. Definitely.
Yeah.
So have you faced any challenges in your creative practice?
Oh yeah, I mean, I am so untidy, and that really doesn't help. Like to get nice conducive space to work, so that you kind of got that mental space to make creativity happen. I sometimes have to spend some time tidying up before I can start. And then by the time you've tidied up, you're like, oh, I'm just tired now. I don't want to make anything. That can be a bit of a challenge. And then when I do start making something, I just make loads of mess, and it's back to square one. So that for me is quite a challenge. The other things I did find that I had a bit of a creative block a while ago. Like I did a lot of painting when I was younger, and then I put it down and I didn't pick it up for quite literally about sort of a decade. And it's only now that I've picked it back up and gone, yeah, this is great, this is fun. Why did I stop doing this? So yeah, I have had some challenges, and I think everybody will, and you just got to find your way of working through them.
I totally agree. And I think by like, we were just talking about earlier, like by doing it, that can often unlock unlock that kind of creative block, can't it, when
Exactly.
you're
Yeah.
creatively blocked. So I wanted to ask you whether you had any tips, say like someone's listening to this and they're as inspired by your creative practice as me, and do you have any tips for them at all?
Yeah, be open and be receptive to new things, new methods, and that's what I guess I was referencing earlier. If you get an opportunity to do something, take it. And don't be afraid to play. That's really, really important. You know, you learn by doing, well, I mean, I learned by doing things. I think other people probably also learn by doing things as well. And what you make when you're playing doesn't need to be perfect. I think sometimes people can get wrapped up in, I've got to make something that's perfect. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. If you don't make something that's perfect, don't worry. Learn from it, move on, make something else. And the second one you make may not be perfect. The third one you make may not be perfect, but you'll either learn that you've got perfection in your imperfection, or you will learn what you want to make. So just keep going, really. But creative practice is really, really individual. I mean, I would suggest start by keeping a sketchbook of some description, and I'm using that term very loosely. Jot down ideas, notes, development drawings. I mean, I have a series of sketchbooks in the sense that I jot down things, notes, and development drawings on whatever I have to hand. So I have a sort of a virtual sketchbook of things everywhere. And keep processes that feel right to you, and discard the ones that you don't. So your sketchbook, in inverted commas, might actually end up being like a box of things that you have made or done, or like little snippets of something, and that you've kept them. And the fact that it's not in a book and neatly documented is fine. Do what feels right to you to develop your own creative practice.
I think that's such good advice, that everyone's brain as well, I suppose, works in different ways, doesn't it? And some people are very visual, some people are more kind of like, collecting physical things. Some people like to do it digitally, like we were saying about,
Exactly.
Pinterest. I do think having one place, I think that's such good advice, one place where all your ideas are kept is so like supportive, because you always know that you can like go back to that one place and your ideas will be there. I think that's I found that very helpful in terms of like, say like if I'm trying to like make new glazes, or think of
Yeah.
like we're testing a new color or something, just knowing that, because I used to have it all on like little post-its around, and I just found it started to just get really confusing. So just having one notebook, one place, I think that's a really supportive thing to have in
Yeah,
your creative
exactly.
practice, definitely.
So I've got, for
Yeah.
example, I've got a notebook that I tend to keep where I'm sewing. So that's where all the sewing related bits end up. And then I've got a series of sketchbooks down where I do sort of some of the messier stuff, and that's where all of that ends up. They're not in the same physical sketchbook together. It doesn't matter, because I know where all of those thoughts are, across the different places that I work, and that, keeping them in one place does help.
Absolutely. Do you find as well that you get ideas? So I started like taking a little notebook around with me in my bag, because I find that sometimes I'm just like walking down the street and then an idea will pop into my mind. So I've been trying to like take the pressure off my brain. When you think, oh no,
Yeah.
I must remember this idea. Try and take the pressure off by like just having a notebook, and then I can just like write it down. I'm like, it's great, it's safe. I don't have to remember it in my brain. I wonder if things like that like
Yeah,
happen
I,
to
I
you when
do. I do. I did at one point wander around with a physical notebook, but now I've gone digital. And I've got like note-taking app in my phone. That's fine until I've got something I want to draw. But for most of the things, it's all in one place there, and I haven't put it down anywhere, and I can't lose it quite as easily. But yeah, absolutely. Somewhere you can jot stuff down on the go is really helpful as well.
Yeah, I heard Taylor Swift actually writes her songs on her phone. So, yeah.
I'm in good company then.
Yeah. So what's next for Field and Fabric and Catkin Tree Studio?
Yeah, so I've got more designs and products in pipework for the Catkin Tree studio side of things. So the range is going to be growing. I've just released some cats floating in space. So if you've not seen that, I've got some wash bags out with them, and I've actually got some cushions coming in really soon, which I'm excited about. So that's a brand new design. And I'm also working on one with honeybees as well. So that's coming soon. I'm thinking about possibly expanding out into things like aprons and oven gloves as well. So I think that might be a project maybe for the new year, but yeah, so that's happening. I'm also ramping up for Christmas already. Christmas in July and all that. So working really, really hard to get some more stock sorted for Field and Fabric. I've got a lot of fairs coming up starting in September, as I'm sure you do as well, Catherine. Trying to get all of that stock up together for that. So yeah, you will see me out and about come autumn.
Tell listeners where they can find out more about your work and connect with you.
Yeah, please head over to the websites. They've also got links to social media, but yeah, so if you pop over to the Field and Fabric website, which is fieldandfabric.square.site, you can see what I do there. And Catkin Tree Studio is catkintreestudio.co.uk. There is a mailing list as well on the Field and Fabric website that you can sign up to that covers both of the businesses. And if you want to contact me direct, then the best method is to drop me an email at hello@catkintreestudio.co.uk.
Oh yeah, so that was me and Ruth chatting about creativity and her creative businesses, and I just wanted to pick up on a few things. After the interview, I was sort of mulling over, and I just think that whole thing about being kind of courageous in trying new things creatively is just so important. Just even if you think you're a very, very beginner at it, it gives you so much more confidence, I think, in just in your creative practice in general. And like Ruth was saying, you don't have to be like perfect at something straight away. It's just so fantastic to like try new things. Think about I try and think about like the process over the kind of perfect outcome of pottery. I try and kind of enjoy the actual process, because I think it is easy, I think, to be sometimes like disappointed with the outcome, especially if you're new at something, and I think pottery is very, I've certainly experienced that in pottery. It can be very frustrating if, you have this idea in your mind and you're like, I just want it to look like this. So I think that, what Ruth was saying about that emphasis on the kind of process of learning and doing, is so important, especially in pottery, I think. And another thing that Ruth was saying is about, which I thought was so interesting actually, is about how just doing a creative practice that, in lots of different things can actually kind of just all go into this kind of creative melting pot and actually really, just help your kind of your ideas come to you, action, creates ideas, and looking at other people's work creates ideas, and just being inspired by things around you create ideas as well. But I think in the past I've thought, if I'm sketching or something, that's nothing to do with pottery, it's not going to help my pottery practice, when actually now I can it's kind of broadened my understanding really of my own creative practice. It's like everything you do that's creative is just going to help you in all aspects of your creative life in general. So sketching, painting, collaging, I can see now that just by kind of opening that creative flow more, letting the ideas come, and recording them in one place like we were talking about, that's going to really help my pottery practice as well. So so I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I enjoyed chatting to Ruth and stuff. And thank you so much for joining me, and really for joining us. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. And until then, wishing you very, very happy potting, and I'll see you then. Goodbye. Thank you so much for joining me for the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about Oxford Clay or eco-conscious pottery, there's so much for you on the Oxford Clay website. There's books, e-courses, there's a blog on there, loads of other podcast episodes, and I can't wait to share it with you. The web address is oxfordclay.co.uk. I'll see you over there.